Picture yourself in a small city courtroom where people dig for their last $20 just to settle a parking ticket. Fluorescent lights hum, winter coats rustle, and the line shuffles forward, one tired story after another. Judge Caprio leans on his bench, kind, alert, working through the morning stack of minor violations like a man sorting mail. An older woman in a wool hat whispers that she'll have to skip her grocery run if the fine isn't reduced. A young delivery driver fidgets with his cap, worried about getting back to work. It's all familiar, almost comforting in its routine, a place where mistakes are ordinary and money matters. Then the side door opens, and the room changes. She doesn't burst in. She glides. 23, tall, perfectly put together, in a dress that looks like it belongs under chandeliers, not ceiling tiles. The fabric catches the light when she moves. Her heels sound too sharp for the worn courtroom floor. A slim gold bracelet flashes at her wrist as she lifts her hair from her collar, more out of habit than need. Savannah Rowland pauses just inside the doorway and lets her eyes sweep the room. Not with arrogance exactly, but with the ease of someone used to entering rooms that pause for her. The clerk's hand hesitates over the next file. A man in the back nudges his neighbor and murmurs her last name, Rowland. In Providence, it's just another word on a docket. In Texas, on the news, it has weight. She walks toward the defendant's spot as if it's a mark on a stage. No nervous shuffling, no uncertain smile. Her lipstick is the kind that costs more than some people's shoes. Her posture says this is an inconvenience, not a reckoning. Next case, the clerk calls. Savannah Rowland, 3 citations. She sets her designer handbag down carefully, as though the wooden table might stain it, and looks up at the bench. Her expression is almost amused. "Good morning," Judge Caprio says, voice steady, courteous as always. "Miss Rowland, you're here about a parking matter?" She gives a small laugh, a practiced sound. "Honestly, Your Honor, I would have just paid it," she says. Well, it's pocket change." The words land like a dropped glass. A few people glance at each other. One man lets out a soft, disbelieving snort. A woman in the second row presses her lips together, suddenly very aware of the folded citation in her own hands. Caprio's eyebrows lift just a fraction. He doesn't smile. "Pocket change," he repeats mildly, as if tasting the phrase. He reaches for the file. "Let's see what kind of change we're talking about." He flips through the documents, his eyes moving slower now, more intent. The room leans in, just a little. "Well," he says, "it appears this isn't a single ticket." Savannah shifts her weight, one hand resting lightly on her hip, as if still posing for an unseen camera. "You have 3 citations here," Caprio continues. "One for improper parking, one for blocking a fire hydrant, and one for speeding in a school zone." The whisper ripples through the benches at those last 2 words. School zone. Even the board security officer at the wall straightens. Savannah's smile doesn't vanish, but it tightens. "Okay," she says, as if he's reading off a grocery list. "I understand. I was told they'd all be grouped together. I'm prepared to pay whatever the amount is." "Of course you are," someone mutters under their breath. Caprio doesn't look up right away. His finger pauses on a line in the paperwork. "This vehicle," he says slowly, "is not registered in your name, Miss Rowland." She flicks a glance toward the clerk, then back. "It's a family vehicle," she answers. "It's under a company." "The registered owner," Caprio reads, "is Rowland Strategic Holdings, Limited." That name hangs in the air differently. It doesn't sound like a person. It sounds like a shield. He makes a small mark on the file, nothing more than a stroke of his pen. But from the bench, the slightest shift in his expression suggests he's just seen something that doesn't fit. He lifts his eyes to her. "For some people, these fines are not pocket change," he says quietly. For some people, it means deciding whether they pay this or pay their light bill. For the first time, Savannah's gaze flickers toward the benches. A mother with tired eyes stares back at her, arms folded around a worn purse. The contrast is stark, almost cruel. Silk dress and diamond studs on one side, faded jackets, and creased envelopes on the other. Savannah squares her shoulders, as if choosing not to flinch. "With respect, Your Honor," she replies. "I'm here. I'm handling it. I'm not like those people who just ignore the tickets." The room tightens at "those people." Caprio studies her, seeing more than the outfit, more than the name. The docket in his hand says minor traffic violations. But the way she stands there, as if the law is just another bill to settle, suggests something else. A quiet collision between money and responsibility. He closes the file gently, palms resting on the wood. "All right, Miss Rowland," he says. "Let's talk about what really happened out there." Savannah's confidence wavers the moment Judge Caprio asks his first routine question, one he asks every defendant, every day, without exception. "Tell me a little about yourself," he says. "How long have you been in Providence?" A simple inquiry, but her reaction is anything but simple. She hesitates, just for a heartbeat. Most people answer quickly. How long they've lived here, where they work, what brought them to Rhode Island. But Savannah's gaze flicks downward, as though she's suddenly aware of the invisible weight trailing behind her. "A few months," she says. Her voice is even, but the edges are tight. "I moved here to get some space." Caprio tilts his head, not prying, simply listening the way a seasoned judge listens, reading what's said and what isn't. "Space from what?" The question hangs there, quiet but unavoidable. From the benches, someone whispers her father's name, Henry Rowland, the Texas oil magnate who'd been featured on the news more than once this year. Environmental disputes, land use battles, televised confrontations with community groups. A man whose handshake could build a highway or erase a neighborhood. Savannah stiffens. The whisper reached her. "That's politics," she says quickly. "People exaggerate. It's all noise." But it isn't noise. Not to the older couple in the third row, who saw a documentary about the Rowland land fight. Not to the construction worker who remembers a protest sign with that same last name on it. Caprio doesn't address the father. He returns to his papers, flipping them with a slow, deliberate calm. "So you're here on your own," he notes. "Family back in Texas?" Her jaw tightens, a tiny tick of muscle that betrays more than she intends. "They're back home," she answers. "We had disagreements." The courtroom watches her carefully now, not as the glamorous girl who breezed through the door, but as someone standing on cracks she's trying to hide. "What kind of disagreements?" Caprio asks gently. She gives a dry laugh, not humorous, more like someone covering a bruise. "The kind where you get told to pack your things," she says. "The kind where the front gate doesn't open for you anymore." A few eyebrows rise. In a room full of working people, the idea of being kicked out of a mansion is both distant and strangely human. "And the vehicle?" Caprio asks. "Still registered to the company?" "Yes," she says quickly. "But I'm the one driving it. I'm responsible." A flicker crosses the judge's face. Respect for the claim, but doubt for the consistency. He shifts the topic. "Why were you near the school the day you received the speeding citation?" There. A microsecond of panic in her eyes. I told the officer," she begins. "I was running late for an interview." The judge studies her posture. Too rigid, too calculated. She's reciting, not recalling. "What kind of interview?" "Administrative assistant," she says. "At a tech firm. Small one. Nothing dramatic." She tries to shrug it off, but her hand trembles when she tucks her hair behind her ear. It's subtle, but unmistakable. And the appointment was scheduled for what time? Caprio asks. She blinks, just a little too slowly. 10, she says. Your ticket was issued at 10:42. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't accuse. He simply lets the numbers speak. Savannah swallows. A flush climbs her neck. Her gaze drops to the table as if hoping the polished surface will offer a rescue. I was confused that morning, she says quietly. It wasn't my best day. The room senses the shift, something fragile cracking beneath the practiced elegance. The people who rolled their eyes at her earlier now lean in, sensing that the story is bigger than fines. A movement near the back draws Caprio's attention. An older man, white-haired, hands clasped around a cap, enters silently and takes a seat. He doesn't look at anyone but her. Not the judge, not the officers, just Savannah. A flicker of recognition crosses her face, but she looks away quickly, almost fearfully. Caprio notices. Do you know that gentleman? He asks. No, she replies too fast. No, I don't. The man keeps watching her, patient, pained. Before the judge can continue, he notices something unusual in the system. One of her fines had already been marked as paid, but the transaction notes list a corporate transport account, an account typically used for business fleet activity. He raises an eyebrow. Miss Rowland, he says, your record shows that one of the violations was settled through a corporate vehicle service. Was someone else driving your car that day? Her eyes widen. She didn't expect that detail to surface. Her voice suddenly small. Please. That's complicated. Caprio leans back slightly, studying her. Not the dress, not the family name, but the conflict trembling beneath her polished exterior. And that's when she breaks the tiniest bit. You don't understand, she whispers. I didn't choose all of this. I've been trying to get away from it. It's the first thing she says that sounds unfiltered, unguarded. The courtroom quiets. Even the buzzing lights seem to dim. Something about her, the tension in her shoulders, the way her gaze avoids the older man at the back, the way her voice fails on the last syllable, tells everyone that the story behind the tickets is far larger than the fines themselves. And Caprio, sensing the shift, softens his tone, but not his resolve. Then help me understand, he says gently, because justice starts where the truth begins. Judge Caprio's words settle over the room like a slow, steady drumbeat. Savannah shifts, clasping her hands so tightly her knuckles pale. The older man in the back doesn't look away, his gaze fixed on her with a mix of concern and something heavier. Disappointment, perhaps. Caprio reopens the file, turning to a new page. All right, he says. Let's go through the events of that morning one step at a time. He presses a button, and a small monitor beside the bench lights up. Grainy footage appears. School zone cameras, time-stamped. The room collectively inhales. The video shows a black luxury SUV, the same one tied to Roland Strategic Holdings, pulling up near the school. The engine idles, then cuts off. 30 seconds later, the driver's door opens. That's your vehicle, Caprio says calmly. Correct? Savannah nods, lips pressed together. The footage continues. The driver steps out. The figure is slim, hair pulled back, wearing a light jacket. She steps onto the sidewalk, glances around, then returns to the car, rummages for something, and emerges again with a large manila envelope tucked against her chest. Savannah's throat tightens. Even without the clarity of high resolution, the audience sees it's unmistakably her. Caprio narrates gently, not accusing, simply guiding the truth into daylight. The car remained parked in the school zone for 23 minutes, he says. You got out twice, the second time with that envelope. Her fingers curl around the edge of the table, gripping it like a railing on a storm-tossed boat. From the back row, the white-haired man stands. Your Honor, he says, voice trembling but resolute. May I speak? The courtroom shifts. This almost never happens. Caprio studies him with a measured gaze. And you are? Frank Donovan, the man replies. Retired teacher at Longview Elementary, 42 years. Something about the way he says it, without pride, without apology, just fact, creates instant credibility. Several people murmur recognition. Caprio nods. Go ahead, Mr. Donovan. Frank clears his throat, eyes fixed on Savannah. I was at the school that day, he says. I saw her. She wasn't in a rush. She wasn't heading to any interview. Savannah closes her eyes for a fraction of a second. It's not defiant. It's the look of someone bracing for impact. Frank continues. She sat in her car for a few minutes. Then she walked toward the entrance. I remember because she looked lost, like she'd rehearsed something she wasn't ready to say. The room is so still that even breaths seem muffled. And she wasn't alone, Frank adds slowly. At least not for long. Caprio leans forward just slightly. Explain. Frank's voice softens. A mother approached her, very upset. She yelled at the young lady, loud enough that some of us heard. Then she shoved that envelope back into her hands and stormed away. Caprio turns toward Savannah, but doesn't speak. He lets the weight of Frank's words settle before asking quietly, What was in that envelope, Miss Rowland? She doesn't answer, not at first. Her shoulders, once perfectly poised, now curve inward like she's trying to protect something fragile inside her. She opens her mouth, closes it, tries again. But the truth lodges in her throat. Miss Rowland, Caprio says gently, the story on your ticket doesn't match the facts. If there's something you need to explain, now is the time. Her breath catches. When she speaks, her voice is thin, as if dragged from a place she tried to bury. It wasn't what you think, she whispers. What was it then? Caprio asks. She looks at Frank Donovan, and something in her expression softens. Fear mixed with gratitude, as if she's relieved someone else saw the moment she's been trying to hide. I wasn't bringing a resume, she says, and I wasn't late for anything. Caprio waits. The benches lean forward. I was bringing money, she finally admits. A donation to the school. People murmur, but it's not surprise. It's confusion. Why hide a donation? Savannah hears the reaction and shakes her head quickly. No, it wasn't charity. Not the kind people think. It wasn't innocent. Frank Donovan steps closer to the aisle, watching her with quiet empathy. Caprio speaks softly. So what happened with the envelope? Why did that mother confront you? At the question, Savannah's mask fractures. For the first time, she looks genuinely shaken. She recognized my last name, Savannah says. That's why she grabbed the envelope and gave it back. She said she wouldn't take anything, not a cent, from the daughter of the man who, her voice breaks, who she blames for her son's death. A gasp sweeps the courtroom, a collective flinch of shared grief and shock. My father's company expanded the highway down there, Savannah continues, tears pricking her eyes. Her boy was hit crossing the new intersection. She said it was the traffic, the blind turn, the rush hour chaos, all because of that project. Frank nods slowly. She was devastated, Your Honor. People in that community were? Savannah wipes a tear quickly, almost angrily, as if ashamed to be seen vulnerable. I just wanted to do something, she whispers. Anything. But she told me to go back where I came from and to stop pretending money could fix what was broken. The benches fall silent. Even those who disliked her an hour ago now see the battle inside her. Layers of guilt, inherited blame, and the lonely attempt to mend something too large for one person to carry. Caprio's tone softens, but his gaze sharpens. And the speeding, he asks? If you weren't going to an interview, why were you rushing? Savannah hesitates. The courtroom, the judge, the teacher, all wait. Her voice is barely audible. I was trying to leave before anyone else recognized me. The room absorbs that confession, a mixture of fear, shame, and the crushing weight of a last name she never chose. Caprio interlaces his fingers, thoughtful. Miss Rowland, you came here today acting as if these fines were trivial, yet nothing about this situation is trivial. The older man sits again, watching her with a sorrow deeper than judgment. Savannah stands at the defendant's table, no longer the woman in a glittering dress, but a young person caught between her past and the possibility of something better. And the judge, sensing they are now approaching the heart of the matter, asks the question that will open the door to everything that follows. What were you really trying to give that school? The courtroom holds its breath. The question hovers, quiet, final, demanding more than strategy or charm. It asks for truth, and truth is the one thing Savannah has avoided her entire life. Her fingers tighten around the manila envelope still tucked at her side, its edges now softened from how long she's been gripping it. She glances down at it, at the creases, at the faint oil stain where her trembling thumb pressed too hard, then lifts her eyes. There weren't any checks inside, she says softly. No cash. Caprio nods once, encouraging but firm. Then what was it? Savannah inhales shakily. When she exhales, it feels like she's releasing years of silence. Documents, she whispers. Internal ones. My father's company has been preparing to take over the land where the school sits. Not next year, soon. The school board didn't know. They weren't supposed to know. Caprio's pen stills. Several people in the audience look at each other with disbelief. A woman covers her mouth. Savannah continues, voice steadier now, still fragile, but guided by some inner resolve. I found out by accident, she says. I wasn't meant to see those papers. My father keeps certain files off the books, ones he doesn't want tied to him. Contracts, early acquisition drafts, maps. She swallows. Blueprints showing where the bulldozers would go first. She lifts the envelope, not dramatically, but with the solemnity of someone revealing something that has cost her everything. I thought if I gave these to the school, they could fight back, she says. They could stop it, or at least slow it down. The room stirs with uneasy recognition. The little school trying to stand against a corporate giant, the kind of battle America has seen too many times. Judge Caprio's expression shifts, concern deepening, intellect sharpening. And your father? He asks. Did he know you intended to give these away? She lets out a bitter breath. He found out the night before. He told me I was naive, that this is how progress works. When I argued, he said I had two choices, fall in line or get out. Her voice cracks. So I left. Silence folds around her confession. Frank Donovan rises again, gently, like a man watching a wound open where he expected only a bruise. You did the right thing, he murmurs, more to himself than to her. Savannah shakes her head. No, I didn't. That mother, she thought I came to buy forgiveness. She thought I wanted to erase what happened with the donation. Her eyes glisten. When she realized what I was doing, she told me I couldn't fix a lifetime of damage with a single act. She said I was still my father's daughter. The words hang heavy. Being his daughter is both her burden and her chain. Caprio lets the weight settle before asking, with grave gentleness, then why lie about the interview? She touches the envelope to her chest, as though holding steady something fragile inside her. Because admitting I was doing this meant admitting I went against him, she says. If the story got out, if the wrong people found out, I'd lose everything I had left. My name, my future, maybe even my safety. A chill passes through the room. No one doubts the magnitude of the man she's defying. "And the mother who yelled at you?" Caprio asks. Savannah closes her eyes. "She recognized the logo on the car before she recognized me," she says. "She said people like my father pretend to care only when it's convenient. She thought the documents were some kind of PR stunt. When she realized they were real, she didn't want the responsibility. She couldn't bear the idea of being mixed up with us in any way." Frank nods, confirming he saw something in the woman's anguish that day that words can barely contain. A deep, solemn quiet fills the air. Finally, Caprio speaks, not as a judge, but as a man who has spent a lifetime reading human battles written between the lines of legal cases. "Miss Rowland," he says, "what you brought that day wasn't money, it was leverage. And leverage can change the fate of a school, or destroy a relationship with a parent." She nods slowly, tears slipping down despite her effort to hold them back. Caprio studies her, no longer the polished girl who breezed into court, but a young woman standing in the wreckage of inherited power and personal conscience. "And if your father knew you had these documents," he asks quietly, "what would he do?" Savannah answers without hesitation. "He'd burn them," she whispers, "and make sure I never saw the inside of another family meeting again." The courtroom breathes out as one, shock, sympathy, and a dawning realization that the story before them has outgrown the boundaries of traffic violations. Caprio sits back, thoughtful, measuring the distance between law and morality. "You understand," he says gently, "that your truth changes everything. Not the penalties, those are small compared to what you're carrying, but the meaning behind them." Savannah nods, wiping her face. "I tried to do the right thing," she says quietly, "but I was terrified. Still am." Frank Donovan steps forward just enough to be seen. "And yet you came anyway," he says softly. She looks at him, startled by the kindness. Caprio closes the file, taps it once, and says, "Miss Rowland, the law brought you into this courtroom, but the truth you're sharing, that's what keeps you standing here." He leans forward, voice steady, grounding. "Now let's see where that truth leads." And just like that, the story shifts. No longer a case about speeding or parking, but the unraveling of a legacy, a test of integrity, and the beginning of a reckoning no one in the courtroom expected. The courtroom feels different now, quieter, heavier, as though everyone senses they've stepped beyond the borders of a routine hearing and into something far more human. Savannah stands still, shoulders lowered, the envelope now resting on the table as though it has finally become too heavy to hold. Judge Caprio adjusts his glasses and speaks with a measured calm, the kind that both steadies and warns. "Miss Rowland," he begins, "we're going to address the citations one by one. But before we do, I want to be absolutely clear. What you've shared won't be ignored. Not by this court, not by anyone who considers themselves part of this community." Savannah's breath stutters, but she nods. Caprio flips to the first page, the hydrant violation. "Let's start here." His finger taps the printed photo. On the monitor, the image appears, her SUV positioned near a hydrant, the bold red cylinder barely visible behind a pile of wind-blown branches, and a traffic cone that's half collapsed. "Ordinarily," Caprio says, "this is a serious offense. A blocked hydrant can cost lives in a fire." People nod. No one takes that lightly. "But," he continues, enlarging the image, "this hydrant was marked out of service, temporarily shut down. And if you look closely," he circles an area on the screen. "The signage was obstructed by debris from the previous storm." A ripple of surprise passes through the room. Savannah lifts her head, startled. I didn't know that. I believe you, Caprio replies. The documentation shows it. Legally, this citation is questionable. A murmur of approval rises. Not applause, just the sound of people reassessing her, recognizing fairness in action. Caprio sets that paper aside. Next, he says, reviewing the basic parking violation, your meter had expired by 12 minutes. Savannah blushes, not defensive this time, just human. I lost track of time. He nods. It happens to everyone. The standard fine is modest. We'll reduce it to the minimum. A soft sigh of relief escapes her. Then Caprio turns to the last citation, the one that makes the room fall silent. Speeding in a school zone. Savannah's fingers curl. This is the one she fears. This is the one tied to her shame. Caprio studies her. You understand why this is taken extremely seriously? She nods quickly. Yes, Your Honor. Children cross those streets, he says. Parents trust that drivers slow down near their schools. We cannot compromise that. There is no judgment in his tone, only the weight of responsibility. I'm not dismissing this one, he continues gently, but I will consider the context. A pause. Then he asks, Were you driving recklessly? No, she whispers. I was scared. Of being recognized? She nods again, tears threatening. Caprio breathes in slowly, then folds his hands. Miss Rowland, fear explains behavior. It doesn't excuse it, but it does help me understand what was really at stake. He leans forward, voice softening. You weren't running from the law. You were running from your own name. A tremor crosses her face. She looks down, because looking anywhere else might break her entirely. Frank Donovan watches her with quiet, fatherly worry. Caprio turns to him. Mr. Donovan, you witnessed her interaction that day? Do you feel she posed danger to the children? Frank steps forward, steady. No, Your Honor. She was driving cautiously. Distracted, yes. Upset. But not reckless. I'd testify to that under oath. The room relaxes. People trust him. You can hear it in the shift of the benches. Caprio nods with gratitude. Thank you, sir. He returns to Savannah. Now, he says, let's discuss what these citations mean. The legal part is finished. What remains is the moral verdict. You arrived here this morning as someone who treated this courtroom like a formality, Caprio says. Like a place where problems evaporate if you have the right checkbook. She winces, but doesn't disagree. But the person standing before me now, he gestures subtly. This is someone trying to claw her way out of a shadow cast by someone else's choices. He lifts the file and taps it gently. These fines aren't about punishment, they're about accountability, and right now, you're showing a level of honesty that took courage many adults never find. Savannah's eyes shine, hope mingled with exhaustion. Here is my ruling, Caprio announces. The benches straighten. The hydrant citation is dismissed, legally invalid. A wave of relief washes across her features. The expired meter, reduced to the minimum fine. Payable today. She nods. And the school zone citation will remain. Her breath catches, but she accepts it. But, Caprio adds, raising a finger, I'm not adding extra penalties. No suspensions. No additional fees. Confusion flashes in her eyes. Why? Because you're already punished, he says gently. Not by this court. By the war you're fighting inside yourself. His voice deepens, warm yet firm. I am not penalizing you for the violations. I am holding you accountable for hiding the truth under the image you walked in with and rewarding you for the courage to shed it. A hush settles. A few people nod subtly, respectfully. For the first time all day, Savannah allows tears to fall freely. Caprio softens his tone one last time. The law teaches consequences, he says, but life teaches responsibility. Today you learned both. Savannah whispers, "Thank you. I don't deserve this kindness." He shakes his head. Everyone deserves a chance to step toward who they want to be. Frank Donovan places a hand over his heart. The moment feels like a quiet release, the kind that shifts something deep inside a person. Savannah stands straighter, lighter, no longer held together by pretense, but by something steadier, a decision to change. And the courtroom feels it. Every single person does. Savannah steps away from the defendant's table as though her limbs have forgotten how to move naturally. The courtroom that once felt like a stage now feels like a shelter. Warm, humane, unexpectedly safe. People watch her not with judgment, but with something gentler, the quiet respect that follows vulnerability. She turns back toward Judge Caprio, voice unsteady. "Thank you, Your Honor." He nods once, that familiar blend of firmness and compassion in his eyes. "Take good care of yourself, Miss Rowland, and take good care of the truth you're carrying. It'll shape who you become." She absorbs his words with the same reverence someone might give a blessing. Then she gathers the fragile manila envelope, clutches it close, and walks toward the door. But the moment she pushes it open, her phone begins to vibrate. The screen flashes a name that freezes her in place. Dad. Her breath stutters. The hallway beyond the courtroom seems to dim as she brings the phone to her ear. She doesn't get to speak. His voice arrives first, controlled, tempered, and edged with something far more dangerous than anger. "You made a mistake." Not a question, not a scolding, a verdict. Savannah grips the doorframe, pulse hammering. "Dad, We'll talk," he says, the words smooth and icy. "Soon." The call ends. A cold wave rolls up her spine. For a moment she stands alone, the envelope pressed to her chest, her father's voice still echoing in her bones. She feels the old fear creeping back, the one she thought she'd shed in the courtroom. The sense that every step into honesty would cost her something she wasn't ready to lose. The fear that doing the right thing was about to come with consequences far harsher than a fine. Then, "Miss Rowland?" Savannah turns. Frank Donovan is standing a few steps behind her, hat in hand. Up close, he looks older than he did in the courtroom, lines carved deep by a lifetime of teaching, worrying, caring. "You all right?" he asks softly. She tries to smile, but the expression falters. I don't know." Frank nods slowly, like a man who understands that truth is rarely neat. "You did something brave in there," he says. "Most folks never get that far." She looks at him, truly looks, and sees no judgment, no suspicion, no hint of the bitterness she saw in that mother outside the school. Only sincerity, only kindness. "I didn't fix anything," Savannah whispers. "Not really." "Maybe not today," Frank replies. "But you set something in motion, and that takes courage." He hesitates, taps the brim of his hat. "If you ever need help, a place to talk, or someone to stand beside you when things get rough, you come by the school. We're not much, but we're family to each other, and we look out for folks who try to do right." The offer hits her with surprising force, gentler than her father's voice, but carrying far more weight. "Thank you," she says, voice barely audible. "Truly." He gives a small, warm nod. "Take care of yourself, young lady." Frank walks off, his steps steady, each one echoing with the quiet dignity of a man who has spent decades shaping young lives. Savannah remains standing in the doorway, torn between two invisible paths. Behind her, the courtroom where truth had finally found air, where someone believed in her, even when she struggled to believe in herself. Ahead of her, a long hallway leading toward the outside world, and toward her father, his power, his expectations, his cold promise of a talk. 2 doors, 2 futures. She exhales, steadying herself, and glances back into the courtroom one last time. Judge Caprio is collecting his papers, sliding each file neatly into a stack. He doesn't look up, doesn't address her, but in that quiet moment, he murmurs something softly to himself. The words float into the air, meant for no one and yet heard by everyone willing to listen. Justice begins when a person decides to change, he says. The rest, that's up to them. Savannah hears it. It lands deeper than any punishment, deeper than any lecture. She turns forward again. The hallway stretches ahead, bright in some places, shadowed in others. She hesitates only a second. Then she takes a step. Not a dramatic stride, not a defiant march, a simple step, a choice. Whether she's walking toward courage or conflict, healing or hardship, the story doesn't say. It doesn't need to. Because real change never starts with the perfect decision. It starts with the first one. And as Savannah moves forward, silent, steady, uncertain, the listener is left to wonder, will she follow the warmth offered by a humble school teacher, or return to the cold gravity of her father's empire? The answer waits somewhere beyond that hallway, unseen, unspoken, hers to choose, hers to